the most diabolical scam, trick in history, potentially the most diabolical, and it's the meaning, or the what is attributed, what is connected with, what is inferred by the term slavery, by the term slave, the most diabolical trick, scam in history, where at the end of the day, it's all about masters. Now masters, those poor little people, so-and-sos, guess what? Now they also have got a bad rap. It makes it seem like the term master is wicked, right? And ordinarily white, okay? And it makes it look as if the term slave, those poor little so-and-sos, are wretched. They're poorly skinned, is like necessarily like helpless, necessarily was his name, subject to being abused, and it's down to the kindliness of the master, who doesn't like whip him too much, but otherwise he's subject to being abused left, right, and center. Now this is strange, but on this occasion, the master is in the right, and the so-called slave is in the wrong. It all begins with the kindly master with too much compassion, taking the so-called slave. In reality, is just some pretty insensible, like a retarded dude. So he takes him into his house, a lovely house, big old house, big this, big that. Because the master is successful, the master is worthy. Right? He takes the slave into his big ass house, and the slave, being a bit like a spasticated, the slave being a spastic, nonetheless, physically and mentally defective, which makes him like subject to spasm like that. On occasion, he has a calm, and he does some life a bit calm. And he does his life a bit calm occasionally. Master takes his slave into his house. But the thing about the slave, now this is the slave who the master takes into his house. The thing about the slave is it's not just his mental and physical spasms, it is his corrupt sensibility. Sadly, and this is what everything the master learned, the slave isn't just incapable physically and subject to being like mentally not astute. Sadly, this so-called slave is corrupt as corrupt gets. You understand? He's spiritually defective, psychologically defective, and physically defective. The master thought there was a possibility that with time, the slave being around the master in the finest of settings for his master's house, the slave would pick up on what his master would have, even if the master to some extent was going to be picking up on the negativity of the so-called slave. This didn't work that way. It didn't work out. the master was at pains to see the finitude of where it is this so-called slave had the potential of becoming corrected. Sadly, of course, the slave was not corrupted. There's a certain type of individual whom is impossible to heal. You'll try once to heal the person. You walk with him while he tries to convalesce. You try twice. You walk with him while he tries to convalesce. After that, the master realized he's done his best. He can't do nothing more. After bringing him into his house and it didn't work out, slave down there took over the master's whole house. Made the master say he's the poor ass person that got taken into his house. At which point the master says, that's it. I've done as best as I'm able here. I can move on from the bloke. Every last thing the master will do for this so-called slave, now he'll move on from himself. There are some type of people whom are without salvation.